On page 140 in Boy X, when we last left off, Ash and Isabelle were crossing the river in the cradle that was suspended from a rope, and the rope had just snapped. So we're down to 18 hours and 14 minutes until shutdown. The cradle dropped away, tipping to one side and spilling them out. 30 feet below the snapped line, it struck the water and whisked away in the current. A fraction of a second later, Ash hit the surface and went under in a rush of bubbles. He started tumbling as soon as the river had him. He saw sky, water, sky again. He caught glimpses of the bank, followed but nothing but bubbles. A flash of blue sky, a snatch of someone running out into the pebbles. Is that Thorn? Water again. The figure on the shore, a slender man running along the bank. Then nothing but water filling his mouth, rushing in his ears, adding weight to his clothes. The might of it was all around him, rolling him over and over, scraping him along the stony bed. He was thrown up into the main current, then forced back down again, jarring against boulders like he was a toy. Need to breathe. He could do this. With a surge of energy, Ash kicked out again and again, till his feet came into contact with the riverbed. As soon as he felt it beneath him, he pushed away, shooting upward, breaking the surface and taking a great gulp of air. Several feet ahead, a black crag rose from the center of the course, armed with brutal corners and sharp edges. It didn't matter that Ash was stronger and quicker than before. The rock would smash him to pieces just the same. At first, the water clung to him, its frothing fingers refusing to let him go as it steered him toward the rock. But he fought hard to break free. As one part of the river released him, allowing another to take him, he skirted past the deadly rock, missing it by an arm's length, bringing him closer to the cradle, which was buffeting just out of reach in the thick of the current. The depths sucked at his legs, trying to drag him deeper. The surface pummeled him, threatening to push him down or break him against the rocks. But he had to get to that cradle. It was his only hope. As soon as the wooden platform was within reach, Ash boosted towards it, fingernails raking along the boards. Splinters needled his skin as the river wrestled to tear it from his grip. The river rushed in his face, sloshing into his mouth, trying to steal his breath, but he finally heaved himself aboard. Ash clung to the ropes, which were now wrapped around it, and pulled himself up, lifting his head to search the river. Isabelle! He could hardly hear his own voice over the sound of the water. Isabelle! He watched the river, frantically looking for a sign, a flash of color, a shape in the water. There, right in front of him, something was waggling through one of the slats in the platform. Ash stared, trying to figure out what it was. Then, with a sickening sense of dread, it dawned on him. They were fingers. Isabelle! She was caught in the ropes tangled around the cradle. She was trapped beneath him underwater, unable to breathe. Letting go with one arm, Ash scrambled closer to the edge and reached under the crater to feel Isabelle lodged there. She reacted to his touch as he grasped whatever he could, shirt or pants or hair. It didn't matter, and pulled hard. She didn't budge. Come on! He screamed as he tugged again. Come on! Isabelle still didn't budge. And Ash knew he couldn't waste time trying again. He had to get her some air. Thinking quickly, he moved back on the cradle and dropped into the water. He held tight and pushed down with all his strength, trying to tip the platform. Nothing happened, though. He was too small and light. He needed more weight, more strength. So he tucked his legs underneath the platform and pushed up with his feet while pulling down with his hands. Finally, the heavy pallet began to tilt. the far end lifting up in the water until it was upright. Ash strained with effort, tipping the platform farther and farther until it flipped and toppled toward him. He had just enough time to grab hold of the ropes before it slammed down on top of him, forcing him deep into the water. When the rope tightened, he stopped with a jolt and was dragged along, clinging to the underside of the cradle. Ash forged through the current, dragging himself hand over hand up the rope until he exploded from the surface of the water and grabbed for the slats on the upper side of the platform. Finding a secure purchase, he pulled himself aboard. Isabel was right there, lashed to the cradle by the tangle of ropes, face down, with her head turned away from him. His first thought was that he was too late. Isabel was dead. She had drowned because he had been too slow to save her. He clambered towards her and put his hand on her back, terrified that she was dead. He was filled with a sense that he hadn't done enough, that this was his fault, just like what had happened to Dad had been his fault. But when Isabel groaned and lifted her head, coughing out muddy river water, she paused, bedraggled like a drowned rat, then turned to look at him. "Gracias," she whispered. Ash closed his eyes and lowered his head onto the wood beside Isabel as all these horrible feelings washed away down the river. He had saved her. He really had. He had saved Isabel, just like he was going to save Mom. "Gracias," she said again. "De nada."